North Korea shows it's ready to take substantial steps toward denuclearization. Tensions spike at Parliament. 4 of South Korea's political parties agree to fast-track bills on electoral reform and establishing a unit to investigate high-ranking government officials over corruption. The first battle is won, but the war rages on. Plus, after 3 decades on the throne, Japan's Emperor Akihito is about to become the first emperor in Japan's modern history to abdicate. We are going to start in Washington this morning. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has reiterated that conditions must be created to make substantial progress before the leaders of the U.S. and North Korea can sit down for a third summit. As our Kim Hyo-sun explains, Pompeo also believes continued economic pressure could lead the regime to denuclearization.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has commented on a possible third North Korea-U.S. summit, explaining it will be held when necessary conditions are created to make a big step forward. Speaking with the American political newspaper The Hill for its Newsmaker series, Pompeo said he couldn't specify the timing of a third meeting. However, he reaffirmed that Washington hopes to create the conditions so that if President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un get together, they can make substantial progress. Pompeo also said progress was made in Hanoi, where the talks between the two leaders ended prematurely with no agreement. He explained that the two sides came to a deeper understanding of their respective range of freedom, as well as the paths to take going forward. While explaining that resolving the North's nuclear issue is a difficult challenge, Pompeo stressed that continued economic pressure on the regime would eventually bring another opportunity to unlock and get North Korea to denuclearize. Stressing that Washington works closely with other countries, including Russia, China, Japan, and South Korea, Pompeo said the U.S. is making efforts to build a coalition to continue with the sanctions and try to resolve the North's nuclear issue. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, former U.S. State Department Special Representative for North Korea, Joseph Yoon, says he's the one who signed an agreement to pay North Korea $2 million for Otto Warmbier's release. Speaking to CNN on Monday, Yoon said the then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson gave him approval to do so, adding that it was his understanding that President Trump had given it the green light. President Trump recently insisted that no quote, ransom was paid for Warmbier. Yoon said he did not know whether the Trump administration planned to pay, but he said he believes the U.S. should keep its promise. Warmbier was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in North Korea in March 2016. He was returned home in a coma the subsequent year, but died days later. Turning now to South Korea's National Assembly, with tense negotiations going deep into the night, suddenly a dramatic turn of events. Key reform bills finally given the so-called fast-track status. This comes after days of intense political bickering at Parliament and even some physical confrontations, some fisticuffs along the way. However, the struggle between the main opposition and the other parties is far from over, and all activity at the National Assembly could, in fact, grind to a halt, with both sides firmly dug in for a dogfight. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Key reform bills will now take the fast-track procedure after 2 special parliamentary committees gave them the green light. 4 parties agreed last week to fast-track the bills, including one on electoral reform to boost proportional representation, one on the creation of an investigative body to probe corruption among high-ranking public officials, and another to boost the investigative rights of police. The designation comes after days of tension and even physical clashes between the rival parties due to fierce resistance from the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. The 4 parties decided to push through so that the changes to the electoral system can be applied to next year's general elections. Fast-track designation prevents bills without bipartisan support from being sat in limbo for too long. Such bills can be put up for a full floor vote after 330 days at maximum, as the law stipulates the bills to be deliberated at respective committees within a certain number of days. But the period can be shortened if the parties reach an agreement. The ruling Democratic Party is seeking to cut that time to get the Moon Jae-in administration's reform drive rolling.
It's important for us to create a law that meets the people's expectations.
But a continued backlash is expected from the Liberty Korea Party. It has condemned the fast-track move, saying revisions to the election law have always come through bipartisan agreement. This will likely put a pile of pending bills related to people's livelihoods on ice, as the party says it will no longer cooperate in legislative activities.
They have called an end to the 20th National Assembly. We will fight until the Moon Jae-in administration surrenders before the people.
What's more, getting enough support for the electoral reform bill itself could prove difficult, as the bill calls for increasing the number of proportional representation seats without changing the number of total parliamentary seats. Some individual lawmakers, regardless of party, may vote against it if their districts are scrapped or merged with others. The ruling Democratic Party has called on all parties, including the main opposition party, to work together and make appropriate changes to the bills during negotiations. But it appears that mending ties will be the key for a smooth fast-track process. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, President Moon Jae-in is expected to address the issue of revitalizing South Korea's economy during today's cabinet meeting at the Blue House. This pressing matter was also discussed during a meeting with his top aides on Monday, where President Moon emphasized the need for the National Assembly to pass a multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget. President Moon may also comment on the political strife over the fast track of key reform bills as it's hindering progress on the budget. He's also expected to raise the issue of promoting employment stability and strengthening social safety nets as they are related to people's livelihoods. South Korea's industrial output rose 1.1% last month, thanks to increased production of semiconductors and stronger activity in the service sector. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, semiconductor production rose 3.6% in March from a month earlier, while production in the service sector edged up 0.2%. Retail sales jumped 3.3% from a month earlier on the back of stronger sales of domestic appliances and cosmetics. Sales growth in machinery and transport equipment also led to a 10% spike in facility investment. South Korean companies' business outlook, for April has improved slightly compared to the month before. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the Business Survey Index for all industries recorded 74 points in April. That's up a single point on month. The BOK said business sentiment among electronics manufacturers fell, but oil refining companies, petrochemical companies, they showed better sentiment on rising global oil prices. Construction company sentiment, that rose due to an uptick in new construction projects. The outlook for May, that also edged up 1 point to 77, but the figure still remains far below 100, meaning there are more pessimists than optimists. U.S. trade negotiators will sit down with their Chinese counterparts in Beijing today to try and hammer out details to end the trade conflicts between the two superpowers. The high-level talks will be followed by more discussions. They're going to happen on May 8th in Washington, as the negotiations seem to be entering their final stage now. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
The trade war between the world's biggest economic powerhouses seems to be reaching its endgame, as U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin are back in Beijing for more high-level talks. The two countries say they've made progress on issues including intellectual property and forced technology transfer, which may ultimately end a conflict marred by tit-for-tat tariffs that have cost the two sides billions of dollars, disrupted supply chains, and shaken financial markets around the world. The trade talks will continue on in Washington next week, with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He heading to the U.S. Capitol for more discussions starting on May 8th. The scheduled talks are a further indication that the U.S. and China are inching closer to a deal. Mnuchin confirmed ahead of this week's meeting in Beijing that the trade talks are now close to wrapping up. However, according to the New York Times, the U.S. remains cautious as Mnuchin has admitted the negotiations are at a stage where either an agreement could happen or it could all fall apart. The report added, Mnuchin did not want to say if the talks would conclude by the end of June, but did signal that both countries have the desire to thrash out a deal. Trade advisors in China appear more confident an agreement can be reached, saying both sides need it politically, who is seen in China as being eager to clinch a deal before the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea reclaimed the top spot in terms of the ratio of R&D spending to GDP in 2017, surpassing that of Israel. Citing the OECD's main science and technology indicators, the Korea Institute of Science and Technology Evaluation and Planning and the Ministry of Science and ICT explained that South Korea's R&D intensity, as it's known, which is the expenditure on R&D as a percentage to GDP, stood at 4.55%. Israel had the second highest R&D intensity, followed by Switzerland. Now, Seoul City has signed an agreement with Arirang TV, the very channel you're watching right now, to promote the South Korean capital's vibrant culture, its attractions and events to viewers around the world. Won Jong-hwan with the details.
More than 100 million households from over 100 countries around the world will be able to see exactly what's going on in the capital city of South Korea. The Seoul metropolitan government signed an agreement with Arirang TV on Monday to deliver information about the city's events, policies, and life, and of course, the many stunning tourist attractions Seoul has to offer. The city's mayor hopes to take this opportunity to better promote the charm of Seoul around the world as the capital city aims to become a representative model for other cities around the globe.
We are sharing and exporting the experience and wisdom of Seoul's development and modern history with other cities around the world. Our MOU sign is very much good momentum for two organizations, shares and dedicate the international development of Seoul, marketing.
With the agreement, events and festivals held in Seoul will be broadcast to viewers around the globe once a week.
Especially this year, we are having the 100th anniversary national athlete competitions. And also, in ordinary lives, we have so many interesting festivals and events, such as 365 fashion event, something like that.
Marking its 4th edition this year, the Seoul 365 Fashion Show will encompass more than 500 individual events across the city until the end of the year. A street fashion show will showcase pieces by designers chosen as Designer of the Month at various locations in the city, including Dongdaemun Design Plaza, Gwanghwamun, and Sinchon. Every month, the chosen designers will show their collections 3 times a week at different locations, and in May, designer Kim Seol-ryung, famous for designing outfits for global K-pop sensations BTS, will showcase his pieces. And thanks to the newly signed agreement, international fashionistas will be able to tune and to see exactly what Seoul has to offer. Won Jong-hwan, Arirang News.
The Islamic State group has released a video purported to be that of its leader, a leader who has not been seen since 2014. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So tell us about this video.
A video was released by the extremist group's media wing Al-Furqan on Monday, and in it, a man said to be Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi acknowledged defeat in the group's last stronghold in Syria, but vowed a long battle ahead. Baghdadi also claimed the Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka, which killed over 250 people.
Your brothers in Sri Lanka have pleased the hearts of Muslims with their attacks that shook the Crusaders on their Easter day in revenge to your brothers in Baghdad. The number of the Crusaders' victims reached more than 1,000, between dead and wounded. This is part of the revenge that awaits the Crusaders and their followers, and we thank God that there were Americans and Europeans among the dead.
Baghdadi is seen with a bushy gray and red beard, wearing a casual outfit, a black robe with a beige vest, and is sitting on the ground next to an assault rifle. He's speaking with three men seated across from him whose faces were covered and blotted out. This is the first time that Baghdadi has been seen since July 2014, when he spoke at the Great Mosque in Mosul. Since then, ISIS has only released various audio messages of him. The video appears to be aimed at boosting the morale, as Baghdadi bragged his group carried out 92 attacks in 8 countries to avenge the loss of territory in Syria. It is unclear when or where Monday's video of the ISIS leader was filmed. Despite numerous claims about his death in the past few years, Baghdadi's whereabouts remain a mystery. Japan's Emperor Akihito will abdicate in coming hours, ending 3 decades of Heisei, an era named in the hope of achieving peace. A brief abdication ceremony will be held on Tuesday at 5 p.m. local time, where both Emperor Akihito and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will speak. Akihito's son, Crown Prince Naruhito, will take over on Wednesday, commencing the imperial era to be known as Reiwa. Emperor Akihito, who announced in 2016 his decision to step down due to health conditions, has broken with recent tradition by becoming the first reigning Japanese monarch to abdicate in over 200 years. While Abe has expressed numerous times his desire to revise the constitution, it's left to be seen what messages will be delivered by Abe and the emperor. Former Vice President Joe Biden kicked off his campaign for the 2020 presidential election in Pittsburgh, telling constituents if he is going to defeat Trump, it's going to happen in Pennsylvania. This is Biden's first campaign rally since he announced he was running for president. He outlined his pitch to the working-class voters who abandoned the party in 2016, but whose support will be critical if he hopes to win back the White House next year. Biden is currently the leading Democratic presidential nominee, with a boost from his long political history and his name recognition. The average working hour cost in Germany rose to 35 euros, or roughly $39 last year. According to the German Federal Statistical Office, it's above the EU average of $29 per hour. It's over 5 times higher than South Korea's $7.20. Germany's recent figure represents a 2.3% increase compared to 2017. Western European countries have higher labor costs than Eastern European ones. Denmark has the highest hourly labor costs at almost 45 euros, followed by Luxembourg and France.
Now it's that time in the newscast where we take a look at our Life and Info segment. This is where we focus on information that's hopefully useful for your everyday life. Now, as you might be aware, South Korea has the world's highest smartphone penetration rate and, as a result, faces the side effects of too much smartphone use. To protect pedestrians glued to their screens from traffic accidents, local researchers have developed a warning system using lights and laser beams. Our Park Se-young with more.
When smartphone users approach a crosswalk without traffic signals, they're warned by colorful LED lights on the pavement and laser beams projected from power poles to inform them they're about to step into traffic. An app also sends an alert to their devices. This system was developed by the state-run Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology to warn pedestrians glued to their smartphones to look up and drivers to slow down in the hope of preventing traffic accidents. When a radar sensor and thermal imaging camera detect a vehicle and a pedestrian, they trigger the flashing lights on the road, and the smartphone app sends a warning message to the pedestrian's mobile device. The researchers found that the flashing lights were effective in alerting drivers 83.4% of the time in their test involving about 1,000 vehicles.
The before and after effect is an average reduction of traffic speeds of about 6 kilometers per hour, which is about 20%. We found that drivers slowed down when they were aware of pedestrians.
South Korea has the world's highest smartphone ownership rate of 94%. And there have been worries of the so-called smartphone zombies or smombies driving up Korea's already high road death rate. In the last 5 years, more than half of pedestrian deaths occurred while crossing the street. The warning system, which costs about $13,000 to install per crosswalk, is currently installed only in Ilsan, a suburb northwest of Seoul. The researchers expect the government to expand its use across the country in the near future. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, starting in May, tomorrow, the card readers on Seoul buses will provide audio guidance instead of the usual beep sound when tagging the card to pay for the bus journey. They will also offer illustrations and guidance in English for foreigners. According to the Seoul Metropolitan Government, the change will first be applied to regular buses in Seoul from May 1st and then extended to village buses as well. When the reader fails to tag a card, it will show an illustration and a red X sign telling the passenger to try again. The local government says the changes were made to prevent passengers from paying twice because they were unaware of unsuccessful transactions. Now, abnormal levels of low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, also known as the bad kind of cholesterol, can more than double the risk of heart attacks and strokes, according to a study by Busan National University on nearly 70,000 patients with high cholesterol levels. The incidence of such disorders in those specifically with high LDL cholesterol was 24.3 per 100 persons per year, compared to 11.9 per 100 persons per year in people with normal levels of this kind of cholesterol. People who have experienced heart attacks or strokes are advised to lower their LDL cholesterol to 70 milligrams per deciliter.
Good morning. We are set to exit April and enter May, and temperatures will return to the warm side again starting this afternoon, getting up to the low 20s in most parts of the country. So Seoul and Gwangju will both get up to 22 degrees Celsius. And over in Busan, we'll get up to 20 degrees under fairly bright skies in most parts of the country. So many of us tend to think warmer temperatures means dustier conditions, but that's not going to be the case. Expect decent air all day today. So it's going to be a great day to spend some time outdoors as we bid farewell to April. But you know, May is one of the most pleasant months here in Korea, but temperature gaps will become greater with stronger UV rays. And that's exactly the weather pattern we're expecting for the first week of May through Children's Day and next Monday's temporary holiday. But for tomorrow, we could see some sporadic rain across inland regions during the day. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now, news and weather-wise, on this Tuesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to us on Adyen TV. And a reminder that we have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half from now with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.